Hello again, this is Dr. Reginald Yawnsworth, and tonight we're reluctantly delving into one of history's most enigmatic civilizations, the mysterious Bronze Age collapse and the twilight of the ancient world's first great empires. A story of catastrophic failure, forgotten technologies, and the sudden darkness that descended upon the Mediterranean like a shroud over the dying light of antiquity. We're traveling back over 3,000 years to a time when bronze was the height of technology and great palaces commanded trade routes that spanned continents before it all came crashing down in what archaeologists call history's first dark age. So settle in, perhaps adjust those pillows, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Are you in Greece, where Mycenaean citadels still crown ancient hills? Or perhaps in Turkey, where the ruins of Troy whisper tales of heroes and bronze-tipped spears? Wherever you are, dim those lights and let's drift back to around 1200 BCE to witness the end of the world as our ancestors knew it. Tonight's story isn't just about collapse, though there's certainly that. It's about the fragility of civilization, about how quickly centuries of progress can crumble into dust and legend. It's about the sea peoples whose very identity remains shrouded in mystery, about drought and famine that brought mighty kingdoms to their knees, and about the slow, inexorable slide from bronze back to stone. It's about palace scribes whose final tablets record not victories but desperate pleas for help, about trade networks that withered like autumn leaves, and about how even the mightiest empires can vanish so completely that later generations would mistake their ruins for the work of giants. This is the story of humanity's first great reckoning with the limits of power, the precarious nature of prosperity, and the humbling reminder that even bronze, for all its strength, eventually turns to verdigris and dust. Welcome to the Bronze Age, roughly 3,300 to 1200 BCE, when humanity first thought it had figured things out. Spoiler alert, we hadn't. You've just woken up in ancient Mesopotamia, around 2000 BCE, and congratulations. You're about to experience what happens when civilization is still in beta testing. Your bed is a reed mat on a mud brick floor, and it's about as comfortable as sleeping on a concrete sidewalk covered in sand. There's no pillow, just a headrest made of wood or stone that seems designed by someone who clearly hated necks. The blanket is rough wool that feels like it was woven by angry sheep, and it smells like the goat it probably came from. You wake to the sound of the temple gong echoing across the city. This isn't your friendly neighborhood alarm clock. This is your divine overlord reminding you that the gods are watching, judging, and probably planning your demise. The air in your single-room house is thick with smoke from last night's fire, mixed with the appetizing aroma of human sweat, animal dung, and that mysterious smell that might be fermented grain or rotting fish. Hard to tell. Your home shares walls with your neighbors, and privacy is about as common as antibiotics. The whole family sleeps in one room. Parents, children, grandparents, and probably a stray dog that wandered in and decided to stay. Sound insulation wasn't invented yet, so you know intimate details about everyone within a 3-house radius, whether you want to or not. Getting up requires courage because the floor is either muddy from last night's rain leaking through the reed roof, or hardened into uncomfortable ridges from previous floods. Your feet, already calloused beyond recognition, make contact with whatever ecosystem has developed overnight. And this is just the beginning of your day. The good news, you're alive. The bad news, everything else. Chapter 2. The Call of Nature and its Screaming. Time for your morning constitutional. And if you thought medieval toilets were bad, buckle up. Bronze Age sanitation makes the Middle Ages look like a luxury spa. Your toilet is a clay pot in the corner of your house, shared with everyone in your family. Privacy? That's a concept that won't be invented for another few thousand years. The pot gets emptied when it's full, which is whenever someone volunteers or loses a family argument. The contents, tossed into the street, dumped in the river, or spread on fields as fertilizer. Because nothing says healthy crops like human waste seasoning. If you live in one of the fancier cities like Harappa in the Indus Valley, you might have access to the world's first sewage system. Congratulations, you're using cutting-edge bathroom technology circa 2600 BCE. But don't get too excited. The drainage system is basically open channels running through the streets, carrying a delightful mixture of sewage, kitchen scraps and dead animals directly past your front door. Toilet paper hasn't been invented, so you're working with pottery shards, smooth stones, or your left hand. Which explains why the left hand was considered unclean in most ancient cultures. Washing afterward involves water if you're lucky, sand if you're not, and prayer regardless. For the truly unfortunate masses, communal latrines are the norm. Picture this: wooden planks over a pit, shoulder to shoulder with strangers. No doors, no walls, just you and humanity's most vulnerable moment shared with anyone who happens to walk by. The smell is biblical, the flies are aggressive, and the conversation is limited to grunts and prayers for quick completion. The wealthy might have private chambers with slightly better ventilation, but even they're basically using glorified holes in the ground. And if you're really unlucky and live near a river, you might use one of those lovely floating toilets. Basically a raft with a hole in it. Nothing like doing your business while drifting downstream, hoping you don't fall through. Disease spreads faster than gossip in these conditions. Cholera, dysentery, and typhoid are your new best friends, ready to turn your digestive system into a battlefield. But hey, at least you won't have to worry about toilet paper shortages. You never had any to begin with. Chapter 3: Breakfast of Champions, if champions ate sadness. Time for the most important meal of the day, which in the Bronze Age is whatever doesn't kill you immediately. Forget your morning coffee, avocado toast, or even basic food safety. You're about to eat like your life depends on it, because it does. Your breakfast consists of barley porridge, and when I say porridge, I mean a grey, lumpy substance that looks like it was mixed with tears and disappointment. This barley has been stored in clay pots for months, sharing space with mice, insects, and various forms of mold. The grinding stones used to make flour haven't been cleaned since the last flood, so your meal comes pre-seasoned with grit, sand, and whatever the previous user ground up. Bread, if you can afford it, is dense, coarse, and requires teeth like millstones to chew. It's made from emmer wheat or barley, often mixed with beans, lentils, or whatever else can be found to bulk it up. The grinding process includes bits of stone from the millstones, so every bite is a gamble between nutrition and dental destruction. Most people's teeth are worn down to nubs by age 30 from the constant grinding. Your drink is beer, yes, beer for breakfast, because water is trying to kill you. But don't imagine a nice cold brew. Bronze Age beer is warm, thick, and full of sediment. It's more like liquid bread with a slight buzz. Children drink it, adults drink it, even the animals probably drink it because it's safer than the water supply. The alcohol content is low enough to hydrate, but high enough to kill some of the nasty microorganisms trying to set up shop in your digestive system. If you're wealthy enough to afford meat, it's probably dried, salted, or starting to turn. Fresh meat spoils quickly in the heat, and refrigeration is still about 4,000 years away. Fish is an option if you live near water, but it comes with its own set of parasites and diseases. Vegetables are seasonal luxuries: onions, garlic, and lentils if you're lucky. Honey is the only sweetener available, and it's more valuable than gold, literally. Sugar won't reach your part of the world for millennia. Fruits are available when in season, but they're often small, sour, and compete with every bird, insect, and rodent in the area. Spices don't make me laugh. Salt is precious beyond measure, controlled by rulers and traded like currency. Everything else tastes like Bronze Age food, bland, gritty, and potentially lethal. You eat with your hands from communal bowls because individual place settings are for the future. Sharing food also means sharing diseases, but hey, that's just building community immunity the hard way. Chapter 4. Fashion Disasters of the Ancient World. Time to get dressed, and your wardrobe consists of exactly one outfit that you'll wear until it literally falls apart, or until you die, whichever comes first. Fast fashion won't exist for another 5,000 years, and frankly, you should be grateful for any fashion at all. If you're a common person, your clothing is made from rough woven linen or wool that feels like wearing a hair shirt designed by someone who hated skin. The linen comes from flax that's been soaked in water until it rots, then beaten until it separates into fibers. The smell never quite goes away. Wool comes from sheep that weren't exactly known for their hygiene, and the lanolin gives everything a distinctly barnyard aroma. Your tunic is basically a rectangle with holes cut for your head and arms. Tailoring is for rich people, and even then, tailored means fits slightly better than a sack. The dye, if your clothes have any colour at all, comes from crushed insects, rotting plants, or mineral deposits. These dyes fade quickly, run when wet, and sometimes cause rashes. Underwear hasn't been invented yet, so you're going commando under layers of scratchy fabric. Women wrap their bodies in long strips of linen, while men wear loincloths that provide minimal coverage and maximum chafing. Comfort is not a priority, survival is. Your shoes, if you own any, are leather sandals held together with hope and strips of hide. The leather is often poorly tanned, still retains the shape of the animal's foot, and offers about as much protection as thick socks. Most people go barefoot, developing soles like leather and picking up every parasite, infection, and injury the ground has to offer. Cleaning your clothes is a major production. You need water, which has to be carried from the river or well. You need soap, which is made from animal fat and ashes and smells like it sounds. You need time, which you don't have because you're too busy trying not to die. So mostly people just wear their clothes until they disintegrate, then get new ones if they're lucky. The wealthy might have multiple outfits and jewelry made from bronze, gold, or precious stones, but even they're dealing with the same basic hygiene challenges. Rich people just smell better while suffering. Your body is constantly itchy from the rough fabrics, insect bites, and various skin conditions that flourish in an era without modern medicine. Everyone scratches constantly, and no one thinks it's strange because everyone's dealing with the same problems. And don't even think about laundry day. That's an ordeal that involves hauling water, building fires, and scrubbing clothes on rocks until your knuckles bleed. Most people just accept that cleanliness is a luxury they can't afford. Chapter 5. Dental hygiene in the Bronze Age. Spoiler, there isn't any. Time to flash that Bronze Age smile, except you probably shouldn't because your mouth is a horror show that would make a modern dentist weep. Oral hygiene in the Bronze Age is basically hope for the best and chew carefully. There are no toothbrushes, no toothpaste, no mouthwash, and definitely no dental floss. Some people might chew on twigs to clean their teeth, or rinse with wine or vinegar, but mostly your teeth are on their own in a hostile environment filled with gritty bread, fermented drinks, and whatever parasites have decided to make your mouth their home. By your mid-20s, your teeth look like a graveyard that's been hit by an earthquake. Cavities are rampant, gums are swollen and bleeding, and those aren't stains on your teeth, that's decay. The constant grinding of sandy bread has worn your teeth down to stumps, and the lack of calcium in your diet means they're about as strong as chalk. Dental pain is just part of life. Tooth abscesses are common and often fatal because infection spreads to your brain or bloodstream. There are no painkillers except alcohol, no antibiotics, and no dental procedures except pulling the tooth out with whatever tools are handy, usually pliers or your own fingers. If you're wealthy, you might be able to afford a dentist, which is really just someone who's pulled more teeth than average and hasn't killed too many people in the process. They might use bronze tools, but sterilization is a foreign concept, so you're trading one infection for another. Some Bronze Age civilizations tried dental treatments. Egyptians used a mixture of honey and ground-up animal teeth as toothpaste, which probably helped a little but also attracted every fly in a 10-mile radius. Mesopotamians believed tooth pain was caused by worms eating your teeth from the inside, so treatment involved burning herbs and hoping the smoke would kill the worms. Bad breath isn't just socially awkward, it's life-threatening. The smell from rotting teeth and infected gums can be detected from across a room, but since everyone has the same problem, it's just part of the general aromatic experience of Bronze Age life. Losing teeth means losing the ability to eat properly, which means malnutrition, which means a slow, unpleasant death. So people hold on to their rotting teeth as long as possible, even when the pain is unbearable. The only positive side, since everyone has terrible teeth, there's no social pressure to have a perfect smile. Your nightmare mouth fits right in with everyone else's dental disasters. Chapter 6. Working for the man or the God King. Time to go to work, and your job description is simple. Don't die while making someone else rich. If you're like 90% of the population, you're a farmer, which means you work someone else's land to grow food you can't afford to eat. The workday starts with sunrise and ends when you collapse from exhaustion. There are no weekends, no vacation days, no sick leave, and no concept of work-life balance, because work is life. You labor in fields under the blazing sun with tools made of wood, stone, and bronze that break constantly and cut poorly. Your plough is basically a pointed stick pulled by oxen who are probably smarter than your boss and definitely smell better. You plant seeds by hand, weed by hand, and harvest by hand with a sickle that's duller than a butter knife. Every calorie you burn working needs to be replaced by food you can't afford, creating a cycle of exhaustion that only ends with death. If you're not a farmer, maybe you're a craftsman, a potter, weaver, or metal worker. Congratulations! You get to work indoors in poorly ventilated workshops filled with toxic fumes, dangerous tools, and the constant risk of accidents. Potters breathe clay dust all day and develop lung problems. Metal workers handle hot bronze and toxic ores without protective equipment. Weavers develop repetitive strain injuries and go blind from close work in dim light. The pay is subsistence at best. You work for food, shelter, and the privilege of working tomorrow. Money exists, but mostly for the wealthy. You deal in barter, trading your labor for grain, beer, and the hope that tomorrow won't be worse than today. Safety regulations don't exist. Industrial accidents are just part of the job. Lose a finger to a bronze saw, keep working, break a bone falling from scaffolding, walk it off. Develop lead poisoning from metalwork, that's just Tuesday. Women work just as hard as men but get paid less and have fewer rights. If you're a woman, you're likely weaving, cooking, or working the fields while also managing children, elderly relatives, and household tasks. The concept of gender equality is about as foreign as indoor plumbing. Children start working as soon as they can walk. There's no school, no childhood, just smaller versions of adult misery. A 5-year-old with a clay pot bigger than their head, hauling water from the river, because education is for rich people and gods, your boss is probably illiterate, your working conditions are deadly, and your future prospects are grim. But hey, at least you're contributing to the first civilizations, assuming you survived long enough to see them flourish. Chapter 7. Weather, Nature's Daily Torture Session. Let's talk about climate control in the Bronze Age, which is to say there isn't any. You're completely at the mercy of weather patterns that seem designed by a sadistic god with a sense of humor and a grudge against humanity. Winter means your mud brick house becomes a freezing tomb. There's no insulation, no central heating, and no glass windows, just openings covered with animal hides or woven mats. Your fire burns wood, dry dung, or whatever flammable material you can find, filling your house with smoke because chimneys haven't been perfected yet. You huddle around the fire pit in the center of your room, trying not to asphyxiate while also trying not to freeze. The cold seeps through the walls, up from the floor, and down from the roof. Your breath creates clouds of vapor that freeze on your blankets. Frostbite is common, but mostly people just accept that losing feeling in their toes is part of surviving until spring. Wood is precious, so you ration heat like it's made of gold. Summer is worse. Your house becomes a clay oven that bakes you slowly throughout the day. The mud brick walls absorb heat and radiate it back at you all night long. There are no fans, no air conditioning, and definitely no ice. You sweat through your one set of clothes, but you can't take them off because sunburn will literally kill you, and social norms require coverage. The heat brings insects, swarms of flies, mosquitoes, and other biting creatures that see you as a walking buffet. There's no bug spray, no screens on windows, and no relief from the constant buzzing, biting, and disease transmission. Mosquitoes carry malaria, flies spread dysentery, and various other insects bring their own special gifts of illness and misery. Rainy season turns your world into a mud pit. Streets become impassable rivers of filth. Houses leak, foundations crumble, and everything you own becomes damp and moldy. The humidity breeds disease, ruins food stores, and makes every surface slippery and dangerous. Drought is a death sentence. Rivers dry up, crops fail, and entire populations migrate or die. There are no reservoirs, no irrigation systems that work consistently, and no government programs to help. When the water stops flowing, people start dying. Extreme weather events, floods, sandstorms, hailstorms, can destroy entire cities overnight. There's no weather prediction, no early warning systems, and no disaster relief. You wake up to find your house gone, your crops destroyed, and your family scattered or dead. Seasonal affective disorder wasn't recognized as a condition, but seasonal death disorder was a very real problem. People planned their lives around surviving the next weather extreme, and many didn't make it. Chapter 8. Water, the original Russian roulette. Need a drink? Good luck, because water in the Bronze Age is like playing Russian roulette with 5 bullets in the chamber. Every sip could be your last, but you need it to survive. So bottoms up and pray to whatever gods might be listening. Your water comes from rivers, wells, or cisterns that also serve as sewage disposal, animal watering holes, and general dumping grounds for anything too gross to keep in the house. Upstream, people are dumping chamber pots, washing corpses, and letting their animals defecate directly into your drinking supply. Rivers aren't the flowing streams of nature documentaries. They're slow-moving collections of every nasty thing that can dissolve in water. Dead animals, human waste, industrial runoff from metalworking, and enough bacteria to start their own civilization. The water is brown, smells like rotting eggs, and has chunks of things you don't want to identify floating in it. Wells are supposed to be cleaner, but they're often contaminated by seepage from nearby latrines, or they've been contaminated by the rope, bucket, or dead animals that fell in. Many wells are shared by entire neighborhoods, so whatever disease your neighbor has, you're about to have too. Water storage is a nightmare. Clay pots develop cracks that let bacteria in and water out. Without refrigeration, stagnant water becomes a breeding ground for every waterborne illness known to humanity, and several that haven't been named yet. Some people try to purify water by boiling it, but fuel is precious and the concept of bacteria won't be discovered for another 4,000 years. They know boiled water is sometimes safer, but they don't know why, so it's not a consistent practice. Beer and wine are safer alternatives, but they come with their own problems. The alcohol content kills some bacteria, but not all, and drinking fermented beverages all day every day leads to chronic dehydration, malnutrition, and a population that's slightly drunk most of the time. Waterborne diseases are the leading cause of death. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid, and parasitic infections spread through communities like wildfire. Entire families die within days of each other, and entire neighborhoods can be wiped out by a contaminated water source. The wealthy might have access to better water sources, deeper wells, stored rainwater, or imported water, but even they're not safe. Disease doesn't respect social class when it comes to water contamination. Children are especially vulnerable. Their immune systems can't handle the bacterial load, and diarrheal diseases kill more Bronze Age children than warfare, famine, and predators combined. Parents watch their children die of something that could be prevented with clean water, but clean water might as well be liquid gold. Washing with this water is almost as dangerous as drinking it. Open wounds, cuts, and rashes become infected. Bathing, when it happens at all, often makes people sicker than they were before. Chapter 9. Medicine, where hope goes to die. Feeling under the weather? Time to visit your local healer, where medicine is 1 part wishful thinking, 2 parts ritual sacrifice, and 3 parts hoping you die quickly so the pain stops. Bronze Age healthcare makes medieval medicine look like modern surgery. Let's start with diagnosis. Every illness, from a headache to a broken bone to obvious bacterial infection, is caused by one of 3 things: angry gods, evil spirits, or an imbalance in your bodily humours. The actual cause, bacteria, viruses, injuries, or genetic conditions, won't be understood for millennia, so treatment focuses on appeasing supernatural forces rather than addressing medical realities. Your healer might be a priest, a witch doctor, or someone who once saw someone else recover from something similar. Medical training consists of apprenticing with someone who's kept more patients alive than they've killed, which isn't saying much. Knowledge is passed down through oral tradition, which means medical facts get distorted like a Bronze Age game of telephone. Treatment options are wonderfully primitive. Got a fever? Let's drill a hole in your skull to release the evil spirits, a procedure called trepanation that's exactly as horrible as it sounds. Suffering from mental illness? Clearly you're possessed by demons, so we'll beat them out of you or leave you to die in the wilderness. Surgery is performed with bronze tools that haven't been sterilized by practitioners who don't understand anatomy in conditions that guarantee infection. There's no anesthesia except maybe some fermented drinks or herbs that might make you hallucinate while you bleed to death. Amputations are performed with saws, bone setting involves lots of screaming and hoping, and internal surgery is a death sentence with extra steps. Pharmaceuticals consist of whatever grows nearby, mixed with animal parts, ground minerals, and wishful thinking. Some herbal remedies actually work. Willow bark contains salicin similar to aspirin, but most are either useless or actively poisonous. Mercury, lead, and arsenic are commonly prescribed medicines, which explains why so many patients die during treatment. Childbirth is a coin flip between life and death. Women give birth attended by midwives who might have some practical experience but no understanding of sterile techniques, proper positioning, or what to do when things go wrong. Maternal mortality rates are astronomical, and infant mortality is even worse. Broken bones are set by feel and bound with whatever's available. If they heal crooked, which they usually do, you spend the rest of your life with a permanent limp and chronic pain. If they get infected, which they often do, you die slowly and painfully. Mental health treatment doesn't exist. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, and other psychological conditions are seen as moral failings or supernatural afflictions. Treatment ranges from herbal remedies that might accidentally help to exorcism rituals that definitely don't. The concept of preventive medicine is limited to not angering the gods and avoiding obviously dangerous situations. Vaccination is 4,000 years in the future, antibiotics are even further away, and basic hygiene is more superstition than science. If you get seriously injured or ill, your best hope is that you die quickly. Recovery is possible but rare, and it usually involves months of pain, disability, and wondering if death might have been the better option. Chapter 10. Food. Playing Russian roulette. With your digestive system. Lunchtime. Time to eat something that might nourish you, might make you sick, or might kill you outright. Food safety in the Bronze Age is like playing dice with death, and the house always wins. Let's start with storage. Your grain is kept in clay pots or woven baskets that provide minimal protection from moisture, rodents, and insects. Mice and rats treat your food stores like an all-you-can-eat buffet, leaving behind droppings, urine, and whatever diseases they're carrying. Weevils, beetles, and other insects burrow into your grain, lay eggs, and turn your food into a protein-rich nightmare of bug larvae and dead insects. Meat preservation involves salting, smoking, or drying, assuming you can afford salt or have access to enough fuel for smoking. Most of the time, meat is eaten fresh or not at all. Fresh is relative. It might mean slaughtered this morning, or it might mean killed 3 days ago and starting to turn. There's no refrigeration, so you eat quickly, or risk food poisoning that could kill you. Dairy products spoil within hours in the heat. Milk goes sour, cheese develops interesting colors and smells, and butter becomes a liquid breeding ground for bacteria. People often consume fermented dairy products not because they prefer the taste, but because fermentation kills some of the harmful bacteria. Fruits and vegetables are seasonal luxuries that come with their own risks. Without pesticides, every piece of produce is sharing space with insects, parasites, and their eggs. Eating an apple means potentially consuming worm larvae. Vegetables grown in fields fertilized with human waste carry intestinal parasites and bacterial infections. Honey is the only sweetener available, but it can contain toxic pollens from certain plants that cause hallucinations, paralysis, or death. Mad honey from rhododendron flowers was known to poison entire armies, but there was no way to tell safe honey from toxic honey just by looking. Bread, when you can afford it, is made from grain that's been ground on stone wheels, so every loaf contains bits of stone that wear down your teeth. The grain might be moldy, which adds hallucinogenic compounds to your daily diet. Ergot-infected rye causes convulsions, hallucinations, and death. Medieval people called it St. Anthony's fire, but Bronze Age people just called it dinner. Food poisoning is a regular occurrence. Botulism from improperly preserved meat, salmonella from contaminated eggs, and various bacterial infections from spoiled food are just part of life. Most people spend at least part of each week dealing with digestive issues ranging from mild nausea to life-threatening diarrhea. Cooking methods are primitive. Open fires produce inconsistent heat, so food is often burned on the outside and raw on the inside. Pottery vessels crack and leak, contaminating food with whatever's been cooked in them before. There are no thermometers, no timers, and no food safety guidelines beyond if it smells really bad, maybe don't eat it. Famine is a constant threat. One bad harvest, one disease affecting livestock, one natural disaster, and entire populations face starvation. During famines, people eat bark, grass, clay, and anything else that might contain calories. Cannibalism becomes a survival strategy, and parents face the impossible choice of watching their children starve or finding alternative protein sources. Social class determines food quality, but even the wealthy deal with spoilage, contamination, and foodborne illness. Rich people just have more variety in their suffering and can afford to throw away food that's obviously dangerous. Malnutrition is universal. Protein deficiency, vitamin deficiencies, and mineral deficiencies cause stunted growth, weakened immune systems, and shortened lifespans. Everyone is always slightly hungry, often sick, and constantly at risk of starvation. Chapter 11. Religion. When gods demand everything and give nothing back. Time for spiritual fulfillment, which in the Bronze Age means living in constant terror of divine punishment while sacrificing everything you own to gods who seem perpetually angry about your existence. Religion isn't comfort, it's a protection racket run by immortal beings with anger management issues. Your day revolves around pleasing gods who are more temperamental than toddlers with unlimited power. Miss a ritual? Plague? Forget an offering? Famine? Look at a temple funny. Lightning strike. The gods are watching everything you do, judging your every action and finding you wanting in ways you can't understand or predict. Religious obligations consume huge portions of your time and resources. You need to offer food when you're starving, sacrifice animals when you need the meat, and spend hours in prayer when you should be working. But skipping religious duties is even more dangerous than starvation, so you prioritize divine appeasement over personal survival. Temples are massive construction projects that require enormous amounts of labor, resources, and human sacrifice, sometimes literally. Workers die building monuments to gods who never seem satisfied with the results. The beautiful ziggurats and temple complexes are built on foundations of human bones and watered with the blood of people who thought they were serving a higher purpose. Priests hold enormous power as intermediaries between humans and gods. They control access to divine favor, interpret omens and signs, and demand tribute in exchange for intercession. Priests eat well while their followers starve, live in comfort while demanding sacrifice from others, and claim divine authority for their very human desires for power and wealth. Human sacrifice is common and accepted. Children are sacrificed to ensure good harvests, prisoners of war are killed to celebrate victories, and volunteers are sacrificed during crises to appease angry gods. Being chosen for sacrifice is supposedly an honor, but strangely enough, people rarely seem enthusiastic about the opportunity. Religious law is civil law. Adultery, theft, blasphemy, and other moral crimes are punished by both human authorities and divine retribution. Trial by ordeal is common. If you survive being thrown in the river with weights tied to your feet, you're innocent. If you drown, you were guilty and deserved it. It's a foolproof system as long as you don't think about it too hard. Afterlife beliefs vary, but they're universally depressing. The Mesopotamian afterlife is a dark, dusty underworld where the dead eat clay and drink muddy water for eternity. Egyptian mummification promises resurrection, but only if you can afford the expensive preservation process and your body doesn't get robbed or destroyed. Most people face an eternity of existence that's even worse than their current life. Religious festivals require community participation and resource sharing, which sounds nice until you realize it means giving up food you can't afford to lose and working even harder to support religious celebrations. Festivals are mandatory fun enforced by divine threat. Omens and prophecy guide major decisions. Priests read the future in animal entrails, the flight patterns of birds, and the shapes of oil floating on water. Military campaigns, agricultural decisions, and political policies are based on supernatural sign interpretation rather than practical considerations. It's like running a civilization based on fortune cookies, except the cookies are made from sacrificial organs. Religious education consists of memorizing prayers, learning ritual procedures, and understanding your place in the cosmic hierarchy, which is somewhere below gods, priests, kings, and probably sacred animals. Independent thinking about religious matters is discouraged with threats of divine punishment and social exile. Faith provides some comfort in an otherwise miserable existence, but it comes at the cost of rational decision-making, personal freedom, and material resources. You trade earthly suffering for the promise of divine favor, but the gods' accounting system seems designed to keep you perpetually in debt. Chapter 12. Women in the Bronze Age, hard mode with no cheat codes. If you thought being a man in the Bronze Age was difficult, try doing it as a woman. All the same, dangers and hardships, plus the added joy of systematic oppression, legal invisibility, and the constant threat of death in childbirth. Women in the Bronze Age play life on expert difficulty with no saves and no restarts. From birth, girls are less valuable than boys. Female infanticide is common when resources are scarce, and parents need to choose which children to keep alive. Girls who survive to childhood face limited opportunities, restricted freedoms, and the knowledge that their primary value lies in their reproductive potential and their ability to work without complaint. Marriage happens early, often before puberty, and it's less about love and more about economic transactions between families. You're traded like livestock, literally. Your bride price is calculated in sheep, cattle, or bronze, and your opinion about the arrangement is neither sought nor valued. You leave your family to live with strangers who view you as a breeding investment. Once married, you become property. Your husband owns you, your children, and everything you produce. You can't own land, make contracts, or represent yourself in legal proceedings. If your husband dies, you might be inherited by his relatives or sold to pay his debts. Divorce is available to men, but rarely to women, and the grounds for divorce include being annoying or not producing male heirs. Childbirth is a death sentence you have to keep rolling dice on. Maternal mortality rates are astronomical. Somewhere between 10 to 20% of women die in childbirth, and many more die from complications afterward. There's no prenatal care, no skilled medical assistance, and no understanding of hygiene during delivery. Women give birth attended by midwives whose training consists of having watched other women give birth, and occasionally having kept both mother and child alive. If you survive childbirth, you get to do it again and again. Birth control doesn't exist, so women spend their fertile years either pregnant, nursing, or recovering from childbirth. Families with 10 or more children are common, but so are families where half the children die before age 5 and the mother dies before age 30. Work never stops. Women handle household management, food preparation, textile production, childcare, elder care, and often field work as well. You wake before dawn to start fires, prepare food, and begin the day's labor. You work until you collapse at night, then wake up to do it all again. There are no labor-saving devices, no help, and no recognition for the value of your work. Education is limited or non-existent. Most women are illiterate and innumerate, dependent on men for any interaction with the wider world. Knowledge passes from mother to daughter through oral tradition, but formal learning is reserved for men and the occasional wealthy woman who might learn to read for religious purposes. Legal protection is minimal. Rape is often treated as property damage against your father or husband rather than a crime against you. Domestic violence is accepted as a husband's right to discipline his property. Murder of women by their male relatives is often ignored or lightly punished, especially if there were reasons like adultery or disobedience. Economic independence is nearly impossible. Women can't own businesses, inherit property equally with male relatives, or control their own earnings. Any money you make belongs to your husband or father. Your economic security depends entirely on maintaining the favor of men who view you as useful but replaceable. Religious roles offer some power, but even as priestesses, women serve male gods and male hierarchies. Female deities exist but are often subordinate to male gods or represent dangerous, chaotic forces that need to be controlled. Women's religious power is tolerated when it serves male interests and suppressed when it threatens male authority. If you're widowed, your situation becomes even more precarious. You might be forced to marry your dead husband's brother, sold to pay debts, or left to survive on charity from relatives who see you as a burden. Widows without male protection are vulnerable to exploitation, abuse, and destitution. The few women who gain power do so through exceptional circumstances, royal birth, religious calling, or survival skills so impressive they can't be ignored. But even powerful women rule at the sufferance of male authorities and face constant challenges to their legitimacy. In short, being a woman in the Bronze Age means facing all the dangers of ancient life while also navigating a social system designed to limit your options, control your body, and deny your humanity. You endure not because life is fair, but because women are remarkably resilient creatures who find ways to survive even in systems designed to destroy them. Chapter 13. Violence and Justice, where might makes right and wrong gets you dead. Welcome to Bronze Age. Justice, where the legal system is more like organized revenge and crime prevention, involves hoping your enemies die before they kill you. Law and order exist, but they're less about fairness and more about maintaining power structures through the creative application of violence. Justice is not blind, it's completely focused on social class, wealth, and political connections. If a rich man kills a poor man, he pays a fine. If a poor man kills a rich man, he and his entire family are executed. The same crime has different punishments depending on who commits it and who suffers from it. Equal justice under law is a concept that won't be invented for thousands of years. Legal codes exist, but they read like revenge fantasy novels written by sadistic kings. Hammurabi's code is famous for an eye for an eye, but that's actually the merciful part. For many crimes, the punishment is death by drowning, burning, impalement, or being thrown from tall buildings. Stealing bread might cost you a hand. Adultery could cost you your life. Lying to a judge, that's a death sentence. Trial procedures are primitive and rely heavily on supernatural intervention. Trial by ordeal is common. If you can carry a red-hot iron bar without showing burns after 3 days, you're innocent. If you can retrieve a stone from boiling water without injury, the gods have declared your innocence. If you survive being thrown in the river, divine justice has spoken. If you die during any of these procedures, you were obviously guilty and deserved it. Punishment is public entertainment. Executions, floggings, and mutilations are performed in front of crowds who treat them like sporting events. Children watch criminals being tortured to death as part of their education in social norms. The message is clear: obey authority or become public entertainment. Crime is common because desperation is universal. Theft, assault, and murder happen regularly in societies where resources are scarce and survival is uncertain. But criminal justice is less about preventing crime and more about making examples of people who get caught. Deterrence works through terror rather than rehabilitation. Domestic violence is not only legal, but expected. Men have the right to beat their wives, children, and slaves as they see fit. Women who fight back face severe punishment for attacking their betters. Children who disobey parents can be legally killed. Slaves have no rights whatsoever and can be tortured or killed for any reason or no reason at all. Blood feuds and vengeance cycles dominate conflict resolution. If someone wrongs your family, you're expected to wrong them back, leading to multi-generational conflicts that destroy entire communities. Peacemaking involves complex negotiations, hostage exchanges, and ritualized violence rather than legal proceedings. War crimes don't exist as a concept. Armies rape, pillage, and slaughter civilians as standard operating procedure. Prisoners of war are enslaved, sacrificed, or tortured for entertainment. Entire populations are wiped out or forcibly relocated. The winners write history and they rarely write about their own atrocities. Law enforcement is handled by whoever has the most power in the area. Kings, priests, and wealthy landowners maintain private armies to enforce their will. There are no police, no investigators, and no due process. Justice is whatever the powerful say it is, enforced through violence and the threat of violence. International law consists of treaties that last only as long as both sides find them convenient. Diplomacy is backed by the threat of military force, and trade agreements are enforced through warfare. Peace is merely a temporary pause between conflicts, and neutrality is seen as weakness that invites attack. If you're accused of a crime, your best defense is social connections, wealth, or the ability to flee before authorities catch you. Guilt or innocence are less important than your ability to navigate power structures and survive whatever punishment is deemed appropriate by people who may not even understand what you're accused of doing. Chapter 14. Death and Disease. The Bronze Age's greatest hits. Time to die. And in the Bronze Age, death comes in more flavors than a medieval spice market. Disease, injury, violence, starvation, exposure, and sheer bad luck all compete to see which can kill you first. Life expectancy hovers around 25 to 30 years, and that's if you're extraordinarily lucky and have access to the best healthcare the Bronze Age can offer, which isn't saying much. Let's start with the Disease Greatest Hits album. Malaria, spread by mosquitoes, causes periodic fevers that weaken you until something else finishes the job. Tuberculosis slowly destroys your lungs while you cough blood and waste away. Typhoid fever gives you weeks of high fever, diarrhea, and delirium before killing you or leaving you permanently damaged. Cholera can kill you in hours through dehydration from constant vomiting and diarrhea. Parasitic infections are universal. Everyone has intestinal worms, liver flukes, and various other creatures living inside their bodies, competing for nutrients and weakening immune systems. Some parasites cause anemia, others cause organ damage, and a few cause brain infections that lead to seizures and madness. Injuries that would be minor inconveniences today are death sentences in the Bronze Age. A small cut becomes infected and leads to sepsis. A broken bone that doesn't heal properly leaves you disabled and vulnerable. Burns from cooking fires or metalworking often get infected and kill through systemic infection. Childbirth and infancy are especially dangerous. Roughly half of all children die before age 5 from disease, malnutrition, accidents, or birth complications. Women face a 10 to 20% chance of dying in each childbirth, and many who survive are left with injuries that affect them for life. Families plan for child mortality by having many children and not getting too attached to infants who might not survive their first year. Malnutrition weakens everyone's immune system, making every disease more dangerous and every injury harder to recover from. Famines kill through starvation, but they also kill through increased susceptibility to diseases that wouldn't be fatal in well-fed populations. Vitamin deficiencies cause scurvy, rickets, night blindness, and other conditions that reduce quality of life and shorten lifespans. Mental illness is misunderstood and often treated as supernatural possession. People with depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, or other conditions are seen as cursed, possessed, or morally deficient. Treatment ranges from herbal remedies that accidentally help to exorcism rituals that definitely don't. Many mentally ill people are abandoned by their families or killed as demons. Occupational hazards claim many lives. Miners develop lung diseases from dust inhalation, metal workers suffer from lead and mercury poisoning. Farmers are injured by animals, tools, and equipment failures. Soldiers die not just in battle but from infected wounds, disease in army camps, and the long-term effects of trauma that won't be recognized for millennia. Natural disasters can wipe out entire populations. Floods, droughts, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions destroy crops, contaminate water supplies, and leave survivors vulnerable to disease and starvation. There's no disaster relief, no emergency services, and no insurance against natural catastrophes. Suicide is common in cultures where life offers little hope and much suffering. People facing slavery, torture, execution, or slow death from disease often choose quicker deaths on their own terms. Suicide methods include poison, drowning, hanging, or deliberately provoking fatal conflicts. Death rituals vary by culture, but universally involve significant expense for families already struggling to survive. Proper burial or cremation requires resources that might mean the difference between survival and starvation for the living, but improper burial risks angering the gods and bringing curses on the entire community. The randomness of death is perhaps most terrifying. You can do everything right, eat carefully, work safely, avoid conflicts, worship properly, and still die suddenly from disease, accident, or violence. Life is a constant gamble where the house always wins, and the only question is when your luck runs out. Chapter 15. The Illusion of Civilization. So there you have it, a single day in the Bronze Age, multiplied by a lifetime of suffering that most people endured for maybe 3 decades if they were extraordinarily lucky. This was humanity's first attempt at civilization, and like most first attempts, it was a barely controlled disaster held together by violence, superstition, and the desperate hope that tomorrow might somehow be less awful than today. The Bronze Age gave us writing, but most people couldn't read. It gave us cities, but they were overcrowded disease factories. It gave us advanced metalworking, but the metals were used primarily for weapons and tools of oppression. It gave us organized religion, but the gods demanded everything and delivered suffering. It gave us legal codes, but justice was reserved for the wealthy and powerful. The civilization part was mostly limited to a tiny elite who lived in relative comfort, while the vast majority of the population struggled through lives of grinding poverty, constant pain, and early death. The beautiful artifacts we see in museums today were created by people who never owned anything beautiful themselves, built by workers who died creating wonders they would never enjoy. But here's the remarkable thing. Despite everything, the disease, the violence, the oppression, the constant threat of death, people still fell in love, told stories, created art, raised children, and found reasons to laugh. They developed technologies, created literature, built cities, and laid the foundations for everything that came after. Not because life was good, but because humans are stubbornly, irrationally optimistic creatures who keep trying to make things better, even when everything is terrible. The Bronze Age wasn't romantic, it wasn't noble, it wasn't a simpler, better time when people lived in harmony with nature and each other. It was brutal, unfair, and dangerous in ways that would break most modern people within days. But it was also human, filled with the same hopes, fears, loves, and dreams that drive us today, just expressed in a world that was actively trying to kill everyone all the time. So tonight, when you turn on your lights, drink clean water from the tap, take medicine that actually works, and sleep in a bed that isn't infested with parasites. Maybe spare a thought for your Bronze Age ancestors. They lived through hell so that eventually, thousands of years later, you wouldn't have to. They didn't know they were building the future. They probably couldn't even imagine a world where people routinely lived past 40, where diseases could be cured instead of endured, where justice might actually be blind, or where women could own property and children could go to school instead of work. But they kept going anyway. They survived, adapted, innovated, and passed on whatever improvements they could manage to the next generation. Each small advance, better tools, new crops, improved building techniques, more effective medicines, represented enormous effort and sacrifice by people who knew they probably wouldn't live to see the benefits. The Bronze Age ended not because people gave up, but because they kept trying to make things better. Iron was stronger than bronze, new farming techniques increased crop yields, and slowly, gradually, life became slightly less awful for slightly more people. Progress measured not in decades, but in millennia, each generation enduring suffering so that future generations might suffer a little less. We stand on the shoulders of giants, giants who were malnourished, disease-ridden and dead by 30, but giants nonetheless. Every comfort we enjoy, every right we take for granted, every medical breakthrough that saves our lives exists because Bronze Age humans refused to accept that misery was the natural state of humanity. They couldn't imagine our world, but they made it possible. And maybe, just maybe, we're doing the same for people thousands of years in the future who will look back at our time and wonder how we survived such primitive conditions. After all, we still don't have flying cars, teleportation, or immortality. Future humans might read about our lives and think, how did they stand it? Disease, aging, having to work for money, political disagreements, social media, what a nightmare. But just like our Bronze Age ancestors, we keep going, we keep trying to make things better, we keep believing that tomorrow might be an improvement over today, even when today is pretty rough. So here's to the Bronze Age, humanity's first rough draft of civilization, written in blood, sweat, tears, and an inexplicable optimism that somehow, despite all evidence to the contrary, things could get better. And you know what? They were right.